evening, everyone, and welcome to Duo Demonologies Thursday night show. You haven't seen us in a little bit, but we are back. Let me begin by telling you about some of the upcoming events for the duo. My name is Elise Giamacco Carlson, and I will be your host tonight. The duo will be seen at the Warren Seekers of the Supernatural Paracon on October 30th and 31st in Waterbury, Connecticut. On Saturday the 30th, their talk is at 4 p.m. That day is sold out for tickets, but there are still tickets available for the 31st, Halloween, Sunday, and the duo will be speaking at noon. On November 6th, they will be in Salem, Massachusetts at Witch City Parafest. That should be a good time. Unfortunately, those tickets are already sold out, so if you did get one, you're very lucky. On November 12th to the 14th, Carl, myself, and Brian J. Kano will be at Hartside House in Lincoln for the History of the Paranormal exhibit. That should be quite exciting. On November 20th, Ghosts of the American Revolution book release. James will be there with Sam Beltrusis to sign his books. And on December 20th, the duo will travel to Middletown, New York for A Nightmare Before Christmas. If you have any questions about any of those appearances, just look at the Facebook page or the YouTube channel or their website. So tonight we have, our guest is psychic medium Christopher J. Brown. Just in time for Halloween, we have a psychic. The term psychic and medium conjures up this stereotype. A woman, like I said, it's a stereotype, sitting in the dark, eyes closed. She may be across the table from a person requesting a reading, perhaps with her hands on a crystal ball. Or maybe she's holding a seance, directing all those around the table to join hands. Or perhaps she's a physical medium. She's sitting in a darkened cabinet, mysteriously causing music to play and voices to be heard aloud. In the 1800s, the late 1800s, this was all the rage. Were these ladies really contacting the deceased, delivering messages from the other side of the veil, as they claimed? People who are tired of the usual religious conventions, who are desperate to speak to those who passed before, whether through illness or war injury. They were willing to hand over big bucks to hear a few words through a psychic and or medium to know that their loved ones were resting at peace. Many of these people were taken advantage of. A network of phony psychics would travel the country doing readings. Even without the internet, they wove a web of information. They'd trade a few facts about each person who had an appointment to sit for a psychic. So what the client would see is an out-of-town psychic with no prior knowledge of who this person is, who knew their deceased grandmother's middle name. Wow, isn't that amazing? And they'd pay one psychic after another to get messages from their dearly departed. So in 1882, the Society for Psychical Research was founded, and this is their reason for being: to examine without prejudice or prepossession, and in a scientific spirit, those faculties of man, real or supposed, which appear to be inexplicable on any generally recognized hypothesis. What it means is, in England in the late 1800s, men and women of science of different disciplines came together to find a logical reason why some people just know things. And through the years, in a nutshell, they've studied two things. Does it work? Can people get veridical facts through unknown means and sources? And how does it work? Are they speaking to the previously living, or are they psychically getting this information from either a specific person or a bank of knowledge that is out there somewhere? We're probably not going to answer this question tonight. Better minds than us have been studying this for centuries. We don't just study this around Halloween. We all do it year-round, actually. But what we can do is just do what we do best. We can talk about it. So tonight, we are lucky to have someone to discuss mediumship with. You know Carl L. Johnson and James Annitto, and we're going to present psychic medium Christopher J. Brown tonight, who is also a Reiki master and teacher and inspirational speaker. Carl and James, the show is yours.
Thank you, Elise.
Thank you, Elise. Excellent intro.
Yes, definitely.
Informative.
And we also have Chris. Let's bring Chris on.
There he is,
Hey,
our
Chris.
guy.
Hi, Chris.
Welcome.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Hi there.
So,
Can you hear me
I
okay?
know Lisa's intro, yes, we can hear you fine. Lisa's intro was great. I think a lot of people talk about mediumship. This is not really an interview or interrogation. It's a discussion. We here on the show try to breach many different theories and look at many different things, Christopher. So, for people that don't know who you are, and we've had the pleasure to meet you, and you're a great, great person. You're I do believe you use the word gifted. You've helped people. And for people that do not know who you are, can you give a little bit of a rundown of your history, a summary?
Sure. So I got my background doing paranormal investigation. I went to one location and I was getting kind of information from the spirits that were there, and I just kind of thought it was my imagination. So at the time, I didn't really have a reference point for what a psychic or a medium was. I mean, I knew what a psychic was, but wasn't really sure what mediums were and what they did. So long story short, is I went home and I YouTubed the same location, and they had a medium that had gone to the same spot that I was standing and was getting the, pretty much exactly what I was feeling and seeing at the time. So it kind of opened my eyes to saying like, wow, this could be something, and I should study this and look into it. And I just haven't stopped ever since.
Carl, yeah. I think it's fascinating because there's one thing that I tend to look at with mediumship is longevity has been involved in human culture, and I'm have the pleasure of taking the humanities class right now, and every culture has their basis, but it's been around for a long time. It's been a characteristical thing in so many cultures. Not, of course, in the 1848 when the Fox sisters came around, not in Europe when it became prevalent there. It's been around even ancient Egyptian times, ancient Greek times.
And there have always been soothsayers, people who are sensitive to that other side, the other world, get impressions from somewhere else.
Look at the oracles. Mm-hmm. People used to go to oracles, and they used to tell the precognition, the future, and this is what you shall do. Yep. So it's been prevalent. And Carl, what's your take on it as somebody that basically has been doing this for 48 years? And I like to beat that horn so many times and honk it because it has to be a true testament of longevity. You've been doing this, right?
Yeah.
So you work with somebody as a clairvoyant so young in your life that was predominant. What is your take on mediums and the ones that you have worked with? Like,
basically, I got to say inconclusive, and I cannot generalize. I cannot say there's nothing to it, and I can't say, well, some people are just born with the gift. Yeah. Now, I've had varied experiences with psychics and mediums. Some are trance mediums, some are physical mediums, as Elise mentioned. Some are tangential mediums, and I used to associate and do investigations with a lady who had the gift of mediumship. And I don't know if there's a better collective term for the state of mediums, collectively, but I say mediumship. Now, she came up with something that was so spot on. She came up with a couple of things, but one thing was like, this woman is reading my mind to know this. So she's getting some emanations from me, unless some spirit is speaking to her. That's what she claimed. She claimed that the spirits came to her and spoke to her. I kind of tended to think it was more like a psychic absorption, that she was getting this from living people, but we can't know because we're dealing with the realm of the invisible. But other things, I did not agree with her. I thought she was too general, but trying to be specific. She would typically go into a residence when we were called in and say, you have, and she would say it very loudly and very rapidly, you have a male spirit and two female spirits. The male is keeping the female spirits trapped, and they have a child, and the child wants to leave, but he can't move on because the two female spirits can't leave, and he will not let them leave. And she was a lot louder than what I just said and more rapid, but it's like, geez, I've heard this before. And so I've had good and bad experiences with medium. I generally find them to be inaccurate, but I don't call them out on it, And that, again, I'm generalizing very much. And I was going to cite the example of my first ever EVP recorded, and it was incidental. And I think EVP is actually a tangible mediumship, because it gives you something. You're communicating with the spirit world, whatever that may be, and you have something to show for it. You can repeat it. Now, a medium will have gifts and abilities, but it's very hard to differentiate, what's supposition and what they're actually absorbing, because how does the medium know? I think once the medium embraces a belief that they have the gift, the ability, then objectivity is compromised. You know what I mean? And you don't want to say like, you were wrong about that. You got his middle initial wrong. You don't want to take that stance either. So therefore, I have remained divided on it. I'm only as good as my last experience with a medium. And I'm not trying to develop, but you can't help but, look to see, how much are they getting right. So that's just my take on it. And I'm very willing to hear what you have to say to us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said, this is not really an interview, but
no, you don't have to prove that you have gifts.
Yeah, and I'm not asking you in a sense. This is more to create discussion. I've heard and had the pleasure to work with many people, as Carl has, that I could have seen the generalization, but there have been eureka moments too, where there's certain pieces certain pieces of information in a case that they should have known, where generalization couldn't have figured that answer out. Specific dates, specific names that you really aren't general. It's not like a John Smith or a John Doe, or it's not a Richard Williams, or something that is very specific, especially in this area, in this subculture of New England. So,
of course,
I've seen it and been around it, but I've also seen what Carl has seen, and the soothsayers, and exists, unfortunately, because I always like to go back to the Fox Sisters of 1848.
And Fox Sisters ushered in modern
and
spiritualism,
and in 1816, spiritism became the term, but they started off in fakery. People always debate about the Fox Sisters, but for a bunch of people to come out and say that, yes, we actually fake things, it's hard to always swallow that pill that something exists nowadays that really originated from fakery. But I've seen it, and I've dealt with, like Carl has said, I've dealt with spirits like Carl has. He's had his moments. I believe demons exist to a certain extent. So there's always that impossible that comes forth. So what impressions do you get? What is the messages you receive? Like, how do you differentiate from being gullible or imagination to something that's actually coming forth to you? Like, what was your eureka moment?
Yeah, we just have to know, how you, this was ushered into you personally, how you,
because it's fascinating.
You did explain that, you would hear these things that you attributed at first to imagination.
Yeah.
But then at a certain point, it crystallized for you, and you realized you were receiving messages.
Exactly. And I have them, these holy crap moments is what they call them, or what I call them, because there are times in readings where I will say something and it'll be quite remarkable, or even the person sitting across from me, their eyes light up, and that's when they know, like, holy crap, you're sitting across from me, and I really feel my loved one sitting across from you. So I kind of feel like those are the moments that need to keep me going, and if I didn't have those moments, I wouldn't believe in it either. I'm coming to this as a skeptic's point of view as well, and so every reading I do, I nitpick myself to death. And I want to make sure I'm as specific as I possibly can. And there is going to be some times where it seems vague, but there's also times in conversation where things are vague when you're talking to somebody. So it's really what is important for the person sitting across from you. But it's the specifics that come through. It's the times when it's okay, there's no possible way you could know that. Those are the moments for me that allow me to keep continuing doing this work, and allow me to have faith in that there is an afterlife that's speaking to us, and that there is, like, our loved ones really are not very far. They're just, there's just in a different form.
So
if that makes sense.
What would you look at, and not to judge other people? I think that condemning people is the worst thing you can do. People will bury themselves. But what do you, as somebody that's claims to be a psychic medium and has had these holy crap moments, and you have helped people, of course. What are the things that you look at to differentiate yourself between somebody that you know is a fraud? And I'm not asking you to make names, but even yourself, what have you seen people do that, like, oh my God, like I can tell this person just kind of pulling the chain here?
Well, I could give an example of a time that, and again, with not naming names, is you have somebody that says, "Okay, I have a father for you in the spirit world," and the person says no. Okay, I have a grandfather for you. Then they say no. Well, okay, so you have to get this amethyst crystal here, and you got to put that over your third eye, and you got to make sure that you're unblocking your third eye because it's blocked. I think if somebody's saying things like that to you, chances are they're not authentic. But if they're telling you, "Hey, I have a father figure for you," does that make sense? No. Okay. Would it make sense for you to have a grandfather? No. Okay, I'm wrong, and I will admit that. That to me speaks to the genuine and speaks to the disingenuine, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Well, we have a question here if you want to read.
Yes, I have turned my microphone on.
Yeah. You read it, please, Elise.
I'm going to paraphrase a couple of questions from Sarah Youssef because she embodies a couple of things I was going to ask, actually. In this question, is there such a thing as a collective energetic knowledge in which information is filtered through people in different ways? The second part of this is especially interesting to me. Is such a skill inherent or learned? And she asked in another question whether or not exposure to paranormal activity will help develop such a skill if it is learned.
Oh, that's excellent. I like it.
That is a fantastic question, actually. So I'll kind of address it in the different parts here. So the first part of it was, is there such a thing as collective energetic knowledge? I, as a spiritualist minister, truly believe that there is a greater kind of source energy out there. So there is kind of a collective conscious. I kind of lean towards that. Everything is energy, and because we are all energy, we're all stored in that. But it's almost as if the analogy of taking an ice cube and putting it into a lake. Once it melts, it's becoming part of the lake again. Let's see. And then this part, in which information is filtered through people in different ways. Is such a skill inherent or learned? I think that we all have the ability to be psychic. I think we all have the ability to be mediums. If I was to tell somebody, "Hey, you can't talk to your loved one because you're not a medium," that would be a pretty crappy thing for me to say. So I think we all have this ability. It's something that you can absolutely learn and you can absolutely develop.
What are some things you can do to develop?
It depends on how. There's different things. So, you've heard of the sixth sense, quote unquote, right? But I think what the sixth sense is, no, just in general, like if somebody says, "Oh, I have a sixth sense," what I think they're talking about is you have your sight, you have your speech, you have your touch. All of those senses, all your physical senses are the same as your psychic senses, and they come through in that way. So how do you develop clairvoyance? You imagine things in your mind's eye. If you want to picture an apple in your imagination, let's say, like that helps strengthen clairvoyance because you're using it. If you want to strengthen your ability to smell through the spirit world, you could imagine popcorn. And a lot of it is kind of filtered through the imagination. But what makes it pertinent to mediumship is validation.
So that sounds like instead of calling ESP extrasensory perception, I forgot who it was. One of the people who writes on the paranormal called it extraordinary sensory perception. We're actually using those senses, but in an extraordinary manner. It's not a sixth sense that's separate per se, but each one of your five given senses has like an extra step to it, an extra boost.
Exactly. Exactly.
And even though
that's a great way to put it, turbo.
It's an inferred sense, but we tend to rely on that with hardly even knowing it, I think, on a daily basis. Gut feelings, intuition. We've come to rely on that. We can't even define it most times.
Yeah, I truly think it has something to do with the pineal gland too. I think I've harped that I've harped that harp so many times, but it's one of the
Longest like the pineal gland.
Well,
You
well,
really
so
like
it's
that.
one of the longest, biggest mysteries when it connects to the, the crown chakra and the third eye, because it was a dead gland for so long in modern medicine. Then it becomes a gland that actually sends out an electric pulse and then also releases melatonin. So, which melatonin, if for many mediumships. For many mediums that are involved in mediumship, especially channeling or trying to receive a message in any way, they are technically in a form of relaxation, meditation, calling forth to that spirit. So it's not impossible to say that it's something to do with the development of your brain structure in the gland, because when you're a child, that gland's not fully developed. That's why the children have a harder time sleeping. Maybe that's why you have them a cult to the naps, because you have to get them on a structure and develop them. So I think when the gland develops, that there is that point where the imagination is either ended, or that's why many
also,
people lose that ability.
Yeah, children tend to lose that. I mean, we have more psychic, in general, more psychic experiences as younger people, younger folks.
Of course.
And then when we get to be
There's more of
teenagers,
an imagination.
we don't want to look odd. We don't want to be different. We don't see the things, perceive them the same way. But children see things like
exactly.
I have a nephew who used to. Now he doesn't remember seeing his imaginary friend.
When you think about the idea of the third eye, the crown chakra is predominant in one of the largest religions to exist. Hinduism is very focused on those methodologies. And then you have Taoism and then Buddhism that all focuses on almost those same concepts. So like you have a whole part of a whole world, like half a part of a whole world that believe in this kind of methodology, this ideology of doing this. Yes. It's fascinating.
It is. And I see Bob Burnell has an interesting point. It's a question, but he's taking a more empiric approach, like physical science. Do you want to read that, Elise?
Sure, I'll read it. Now, I'm
Please,
curious, from a scientific interest, have you ever taken a base reading of pressure, temperature, and humidity and noticed a change when you are reading in an area?
That is awesome. And I would absolutely love to try that, but I have not yet. That would be very cool to find out, because I love the scientific aspect of this, and I would love to know how and why this really truly works. So if there is a way to do that, sign me up.
Well, and of course we're all members of PPRI out of Canada, and then of course New England. And one of the things that of course our director Elliot's looking for is of course a certified medium, and they do have those like through Woodridge and stuff like that. So there is forms done of research done on individuals that claim this. I believe 8-step process that they have to go through of determination, and it's fascinating some of the tests they have to go through. So it is something that it would be interesting for yourself to do in self-validation, that if you were getting an impression, if there was a barometric pressure change, was there static electricity change beyond, of course, you have to do, there's so many calculations you'd have to do. Like if you're in a 100 square foot room and you have 4 people enter the room, what is the temperature change going to occur? There's mathematics to that,
Well, yeah, it gets complicated.
It gets complicated, but to collect that data and see if there was change beyond the normality of, okay, 4 people went in, it should be a 10-degree difference if it's like a certain temperature, but it's actually a 20-degree difference. What is that extra? So that would be fascinating to see if these validations through data occur.
Well, that's just it. Establish consistencies. Maybe not just one time. Things change, but is there a correlation to how much, by what degree things change?
And that could be easily done in the parameter of a paranormal a field investigation, because if you're taking those measurements in a field investigation, you might have brought along, a couple of investigators and somebody with a spirit box, and use a medium as a tool, because just like with history in the paranormal, you want to have at least 2 or 3 things to verify any event that happens, any changes that occur in the atmosphere could be one of them. A reading by, an impression by a medium could be a second verification. And then maybe you get something on your recorder later at the same exact time, and there's a third verification. So if you're starting off with a baseline of all these measurements during your field investigation, you could, apply those to what's going on because you're having a medium there.
And we have this wonderfully sophisticated detecting devices, supposedly. They're all, things that were not originally invented as tools for paranormal investigating, but they take measurements and reading, and we have the FLIR camera, the SLS, and all, and the spirit box. But they lack depth, they lack dimension, they don't have intuition. They are machines. They don't, they can't extrapolate, they can't expand, whereas a medium can, because he or she has that human element. And I want to ask Christopher, do you channel, or do you just receive messages, or is it both? Does it vary? By channel, does something actually enter you, do you feel, and speak through you, and then you interpret it, or you just hear the information here inwardly?
So that's a great question, and I think it's a little bit of both. You know what I mean? The whole point of mediumship is to blend with the spirit world, right?
Yes.
Is to blend with their energy to kind of get information. So I have to kind of take me and step aside and allow them to speak through me. Now, because that's why I like the analytical mind. If that gets in my way, then it can definitely ruin a reading. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it comes through in that sense. So in that way I channel it, but I'm also listening, and I'm also waiting to see any imagery. And that's directly from them. So when I channel them and I blend with them, I'm waiting for them to speak through me, and then I interpret it. I did a demonstration one time in front of a few folks, and I said, okay, I'll be your interpreter for the evening, because that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm just interpreting the language of spirit world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. I have a kind of a little story that kind of validates this for me. Sorry, my son. Validates this for me because if I didn't see it, I wouldn't have believed it, kind of situation. Have you ever performed automatic writing?
Automatic writing, not for other people. I've done it for myself just to see kind of if it works, but never for other people.
So what's interesting to me is I don't tell the story much. I got to be loose in the details because it's a very old case. But this Leo Martin was his name. He's a practicing Buddhist monk, but he was also a medium that worked with and ran the group and directed the group Eclipse.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, you know Eclipse. Yep, they worked heavily with Rips and many other paranormal bikers back in the day and stuff like that.
Those guys. Yeah, I remember.
So I was involved in a case up in Lowell, Massachusetts, and Lowell's not a really great area. And the dynamics of the case was that the mother had just lost her son. Lived next door. Her mother just lost her son. It was contemplated to be a suicide, but the crime scene was too bloody for it to be any possibility of a hanging. And she knew that he maybe rubbed someone the wrong way because of the soul. And it's a very toxic area. And she felt like he got involved in the wrong people and they killed him. If they hang yourself, and then for that much blood to be dispersed, it is nearly impossible. But the cops kind of threw it under the rug. She wanted to go the route of investigating the location. And mind you, when we went there, and this is no lie, it was still a crime scene in reality because there was still blood on the ground. She hadn't cleaned it. There was brain matter on the ground. It was very interesting to be involved in that. I was brought in. I don't know why, in some form of specialist, but there was nothing demonic. But I always remember this case because just the automatic writing, get to the kind of the punch of it, is the mom, of course, had his license, and she wanted a means to make sure he was all right, made it to the other side, and basically there was no way I processed that whole area. I was looking top to bottom for everything. It was, of course, looking out for blood and stuff like that. I don't want to step on somebody's blood, especially deceased. We didn't come up with anything that like you would say EVP. Maybe not that I did. I don't know if anything else came from like Leo or any of the other group members that were there, like Blaine and Kim. But one thing that Leo did, he felt the need to do automatic writing. And mind you, I didn't see the signature anywhere, but he was able to do the deceased man's signature. And the mom automatically knew when she seen it that is my son's signature. It's his
Well, that
handwriting.
sounds pretty genuine.
But what even made it more genuine is that she brought his license out, put the license where the signature is, and the signature
Okay,
was
that
a
confirms
wow. Yep.
spitting image to what he wrote. And to me, that was like that was the first time I ever truly witnessed, in my opinion, a message being given to somebody, and that it was fascinating because of the situation and just the confirmation that we got.
And being as empirical as possible, even in the psychic realm, you have to wonder: did the young man's spirit come through and write that through his hand, through impulses, idiomotor, or was it a psychic absorption, to use that term again, or was that something like tantamount to mind reading? You know, got picked up on that psychically. So you can play with anything. Any of these
There's many angles, but still, it was fascinating.
But still, something genuine was going on there.
Leo Martin.
I tend to believe that it was the young gentleman's coming through to you. I mean, it's to say that it was a psychic impression is great, but I truly believe that that's not giving the spirit world as much credit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I really feel like they can come through with us and have that evidence to say, hey, show this to my mom, because then she'll know that I'm still here.
Yeah, that's got to be a very visceral experience for the parents.
Yeah,
it was see that.
It was
absolutely.
She it was comforting for her. Like she felt relieved. We never got the answer if he was killed or not, and I maybe that was painful for her, but to at least get something was tangible for her, and I definitely believe it did comfort her. You could see the ease.
That's awesome.
It wasn't full relaxation, but it eased her, and that's
that's
the most
important. It does serve
thing.
a purpose too.
Especially after losing your blood, being a father. I know you're a father, Chris, right? And Elise,
I am. Yep, absolutely.
Losing your loved one, I can only imagine, especially your child. So
I can't. Yeah, that's as oddly enough is even as a medium. One of my biggest fears is losing someone that I love, and it's just I can't. Yeah, I sympathize very much and empathize for people, especially when I do readings for them, for sure.
Now, Barry is asking about tools of the trade. Whoever wants to read that for us.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll read that. Chris, do you use any tools for your readings, as, for example, pendulums, crystals, and or tarot cards? If so, what tool do you feel strong with during readings?
I will tend to use tarot cards on occasion. I don't usually use them often, but that would be the one tool I think that I would use. Otherwise, I sit across from somebody and we have a conversation, and I pick up who I feel is coming through.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that was straightforward. That's awesome.
Power.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, that's
is it usually the person they're asking for to come through, or do sometimes people just pop in?
So that's the thing is there's different schools of thought. Some people think that there's no way you can control who's coming through, and there's other times where people will say that it's just you can give me them a name and then something will happen. And I've had both. I've had times where someone said, I want to connect with one person and one person only. And I say, okay. And I will proceed to try and feel their energy. And somebody else will come through, and it's of no fault of my own or of the spirit world. It's just that person wanted to step forward and say something over who they wanted. I've had people's neighbors come through, and they're like, "Why are they coming through?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just the messenger."
It sounds like what James and I lecturers do demonology. You can't control who's coming through. If they're going to usurp somebody else's question or whatever.
Exactly. And it's just, so there's different schools of thought that say that, and I've had instances where both have happened, and I've had instances where, like I said, somebody has come through and said, I want this one specific person, and then somebody else inevitably comes through. So it varies, but for the most part, when I do readings for folks, I put the intention out for whoever has the messages of love, whoever has words of love for them, please step forward. And then it usually it has good results. Sometimes sometimes it's great, and other times I feel it doesn't go as well, only because I'm very harsh on myself. Like I said, I come from a skeptic's point of view. So if I do a reading and I feel like it's really vague, I will beat myself up for it and go, that was so foolish. Like, why wasn't I more specific? But really, as long as the person across from me says, hey, that meant a lot to me, and that really helped, then I know I did a good job.
Oh, that impresses me. Your veracity there.
Yeah.
I received a message from the spirit world. It was probably the first really tangible message I received from the other side. And I don't know how much eventually I want to ask you about it, Christopher, but I don't know how much I want to tell you. I don't want to pollute your impression of it, but I did get a message one time, well, more than once, but the first real one I got, I'm sure it was not just a mental thing for me. I wondered for 48 years what that, not every day, but I have wondered what that meant. It's very cryptic, but it was something direct. I just don't know how to interpret it, and I'd like to run that by you sometime. But I don't know how much you would want to know or would not.
I would wish to know nothing. Really, there's people say, I'm sure you've heard of the term. Yeah, don't tell me nothing.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of the term cold reading.
Yeah.
And it's always fascinating to me when people are talking about that, because they'll say, oh, well, they just go in and they don't know anything. And I'm like, well, isn't that validation? Isn't that the best form of validation?
Yeah.
If somebody goes in and they know absolutely nothing, because people will come into my office sometimes and they'll say, how much do you want to know? And I'll say, absolutely nothing. Like, just sit down and then we'll talk. And you tell me what makes sense and you tell me what doesn't make sense. And that's the skeptic in me. I have to have those moments of.
And if you had questions, just give you a lead on it. I would answer you, but it would only be what you wanted to know, just very basic.
Exactly. I don't put out any. I don't put out that I want any information going into it.
I'll keep in touch.
Maybe your name. That's basically what I tell people is, give me your full name, and then I close my eyes, and that's when it happens.
Well, this question kind of goes back to where you said that you can't control who comes through, who's not coming through. What exercises would you perform for opening and closing yourself as a person, such as in cases where someone may use a Ouija board? I guess she means before a session, after a session, and actually this goes along with a question I have. Have you ever seen the show Ghosts on? It's a British show called Ghosts.
No, I don't believe I have.
Oh, it's hilarious. Actually, there's an American version on CBS now too. But of course, the British are always funnier. And basically, this woman moves into it. She inherits an old house, big old mansion. It's full of ghosts. And she falls out the window and hits her head. And then all of a sudden, she can see the ghosts and her husband can't. And, hilarity ensues. But it is really funny where, they're giving her advice all day long. And, basically they live in the house with her and the husband sees nothing except for her talking to herself. Is it like that?
Absolutely not.
Like people yapping at you all the time?
No, it really, that's a great question. And it's so funny because there are times like right now, there's kind of, I'm just in kind of talk mode. You know what I mean? I'm just I'm looking forward to the conversation, so I'm in that kind of mode. But like this morning, I knew I had readings, and there was somebody that came to me before, like 5 minutes before my first client. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I will gladly pass your message on. I was like, just give me 5 minutes. And then usually they're pretty polite about it. But for the most part, no, I close down and I open myself up accordingly. If I was to just kind of live like that all the time, I think I'd go insane.
And how do you do such a thing, this opening and closing?
It's not as hard as most people think. I attribute it to this. You have the magic eyes. Remember those old magic eyes that you would look at and you'd kind of focus your vision and it would turn into an image?
Yes.
That's kind of how I attribute it. So when I want to focus in on the spirit world, I kind of take my magic eye and I look at it and I focus on it. And then I'm able to kind of tune into it. And then when I'm done, I kind of unfocus and then I go back to being me again.
And what's the neutral of attribute? Attribute. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. I just thought I'd say that. Yeah.
Well, the role on that, talking about like what you kind of like focus on. Do you believe, of course, with Halloween coming up, there's always that phrase that you hear when Halloween comes around, when the veil gets thinnest. Do you feel like there are certain points within a year, certain points in a day where it is easier to communicate with spirit? Do you believe Halloween is that moment, that I can talk to everybody moment? Or is that, of course, a lot more folklorish and kind of gullibility to it?
Yeah. Do you wish people a happy Samhain, a joyous Samhain? That's what we want to know.
I do, actually. I do. I do practice Samhain, and I do kind of wish people a happy Samhain. I wish people a happy Halloween as well. So it's very much a universal thing. But to answer your question, I don't think that the veil is thin or thinnest at any point in time. I think that, at least as far as spirit communication goes, as long as you're focusing in and you're looking at your magic eye and you can see an image, you're good to go. But there is that school of thought that, like, this is the time where the leaves are dying, and this is the time where there's change going on. So there's a lot of elemental energy too. So there definitely could be something to the fact that different equinoxes and different elemental shifts in kind of the seasons would attribute to the veil being thin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the change creates action, so yeah,
absolutely. And the elemental energy of that change causing the veil to be thin.
It's always fascinating. So Chris, what is a moment, not to be cliched, sound like probably maybe a program or so you've been on before. I don't want
heard this question before. Sure.
I hope not. What is a moment that changed your thought pattern on everything? Like, was there like a message you received for somebody that like changed your thought pattern on how you perceive things? Is there like that moment that changed you?
Yeah, or was it more gradual for you?
Yeah.
That's no, it's a great question, and I think there's two moments that come to mind that really kind of that made it for me. One was the very first in-person reading I ever did. It was for a long time I was just doing kind of practice readings on Facebook, where I'd write a small little paragraph of what I felt, and somebody would validate that. But when I was first face to face with somebody, and I remember asking them, okay, I feel like there's a woman coming through. She feels like she's your grandmother. She says yes. I said, she feels like she passed from something like ALS. Does that make sense? And she said yes. And that was for me, like, I was like, oh, wow. I was like, okay, there's something going on. And then I proceeded to talk about her personality, and I described her. And so that kind of shifted my interest in this. And I started to think, wow, okay, there's something to this. And then as I started to get further along, I started to do more in-person stuff. I remember there was one reading that I did where it was very, very specific in the sense that this woman's husband came through, and he was talking about the last moments that they shared. Now, I didn't know this at the time, but I said to her, he's showing me you guys in the back seat of a car. He's showing me you guys looking up at the stars, and he's pointing to one, and he's saying that one is for you. And she broke down, and she said that was the last moment we shared together, was he was going to buy me a star from the internet, and he was going to name it after me. And I was immediately, I was emotionally kind of compromised, and I still, to this day, when I think about it, I get kind of emotional about it, just because of how heavy it was. But those were moments that really shifted it for me and said, wow, there's a lot of healing that goes on with this. And there really is people in the spirit world that have pretty profound messages that they want to get across.
So I've always asked this question, but there hasn't. I don't know if these guys have the same thought. Is a psychic medium, as somebody that can see and speak and receive message. Do you ever wonder how it is possible for these things to still linger? What makes this energy stay? Is it people thinking about these individuals that keeps this spirit kind of anchored to our plane, because the need for them to be around. What do you think a spirit is? What do you think they're made up of? Like, do you have a clear idea, or is that something you still wonder as something that even speaks to spirit?
So I have a theory, and my theory is our brains run on electrical synapses, and that is a form of energy. So the energy that drives our bodies is what we would call the soul. There's even been tests done where they measured the point of death and the body mass that is lost.
Yes.
I think that was a total of 21 grams, I believe, was what was measured, or something to that effect. So I think that that's kind of the electrical. What was that?
I think that measurement was higher than I would have guessed. I thought it would be in like microns, but it was actually, substantial enough that they could readily measure it. Something like you're saying,
and
grams, actually.
Yeah, and I believe it was somewhere around there, and so I think that energy is what goes back to kind of the source of everything. You know what I mean? Kind of
Right.
What that source is. I still wonder. Does that answer your question? I kind of got I got lost in thought there for a second.
No, yeah, it could be like it could go into some ether, maybe people's perception of it.
And you were saying about what keeps them here, right? You were asking what keeps them here or what kind of makes them linger around. So I don't think there's anything necessarily that keeps them here either. I think they're free to come and go. But obviously when they're coming through to a medium, they share that they're with their loved ones and they share that they have this love for them. So they know that when, they're not connected to that medium, that, I remember they said that in these moments when I see this sign, or in these moments when I feel their energy, I know that they're around me and that they love me. It's more of a validation to let you know that they're around. Does that make sense? But I don't feel like they're stuck here necessarily. I don't feel like they have to kind of be here. I think they choose to be.
Elise mentioned the television show Ghost. I've yet to catch an episode of that. I've got to, make time to look it up. I couldn't have today because, the Cox Communication was bumped out because of the bad weather. But 2 television shows I watched early on, and I will date myself. Somebody has to. So one was 1965, and both of them were taken from movies, motion pictures. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, starring Hope Lang and Edward Mulhare. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1965. I'd watch that. And an earlier one, my first ghost television program I ever watched was Topper. And it was about Cosmo Topper, wealthy man. Elise is nodding as if she's heard. Cosmo Topper. She's not as old as I am, and she can't be. And I used to watch that in 1957.
Wow.
I know you don't believe it. I know you don't. 1957, I used to watch it. My mother used to call, my brother and I be playing outside, and she'd say, "Topper's on." We'd run in to watch it. And then the Mickey
Believe
Mouse
it or not, I have heard of The Ghost of Mrs. Muir. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
It was a movie with Rex Harrison and Deborah
That was a
Kerr.
good show.
Yeah, and then Edward Mulhare and Hope Lang, and it was funny. It was but touching.
So
Have this good-looking ghost hanging around all the time. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, so he was a rogue, a rascal. It was good.
Following suit on talking about movies and kind of entertainment when it comes to mediumship, we always talk about The Exorcist being like that aha moment with demons being brought to Western culture, especially America, right? It becoming more predominant.
Mm-hmm.
Help define our interpretation of demons as it is now.
So, do you feel like there is a certain movie, like maybe like the movie Sixth Sense, where it has defined a modern belief on mediumship? Do you think that there's a specific thing that attributes to what many people's misconceptions are about mediumship?
I think certainly like movies like, I will say that movie like Ghost, with Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
That one did pretty well when it comes to kind of how it comes through sometimes, especially because how she's confused and she's looking all around like, who the hell is talking to me right now? Like that can be very accurate in the beginning. But movies like that definitely sparks interest. Exactly. Yeah. Movies like The Sixth Sense, I think I think it's great in a way that it gets people to kind of look at it and examine it, even though it is far-fetched. And even though those movies do exaggerate quite a bit, and they paint an unrealistic image of what mediumship is really like, for the most part. I think they're beneficial in the sense that it gets people to look at it and it gets people to say, hey, I saw that movie about the medium. I wonder what that's all about. I want to look into that. And then hopefully they find somebody and have a good experience. So I think in a sense that these movies are great because they get people's interested, and they get people looking at it and investigating it.
Something that was good, definitely a good answer. The time goes fast. Surprisingly, I can't believe it's 8:50.
I could ask
8:52.
Christopher questions all night. Okay.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Before we go into any more questions or any other discussion, Chris, do you have anything that you have any projects going on? Do you have gallery readings? Is there certain things you do or certain ways people can get in touch with you if they want to utilize your gift?
Yep. So you can absolutely find me right on Facebook. If you go under Psychic Medium Christopher, I have a page there. You can also check out it's a web series that Toby Hartford and I have been putting together called Soul Searching. That's on YouTube as well as Facebook. I do have a gallery reading coming up at the Fusion of Windsor. That's a place right in Windsor, Maine. It's on December 4th. And I believe the next one after that, I will be at the Para Expo on the USS Salem. Doing gallery readings Saturday and Sunday for that event. But that'll be in May of 2022.
Nice. Is there anything that we haven't brought up that you would like to talk about?
Topic we may not have approached yet.
Topic that maybe you hear so many times that you feel like needs to be presented with the mediumship. Give you kind of the floor.
One thing I really want people to know and understand is, they hear the term psychic and it gets kind of like a, woo, like this woo woo kind of a phrase. But I really want people to know that psychic is just a fancy word for intuition. And we all have this ability. We all have an intuition. We all have the ability to tap into our sixth sense, so to speak. And so it's not something that is very unattainable. This is something that we all have, and this is all very natural. It's just, unlocking that learned behavior of, hey, ghosts aren't real and you can't talk to spirits because that's not true. Once you kind of break free from that shell, you can really open up a brand new world for yourself. And so I want people to know that anybody who is aspiring to want to do this work, or to want to get interested in trying to develop, absolutely know that you can, and you can do this, I guess.
Well, I have 2 research partners that would be very, very interested in pursuing this. Actually, 3 when I think about it. They are you, Elise, Michelle. I keep this between us.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'll definitely have to keep in touch with you, Christopher. I want to, and I do want to.
Absolutely, please do.
That nascent experience I had of spirit communication. I say spirit. I don't know what. Something disembodied, came through to me. And I'd like to know what you're afraid. I won't tell you anything more unless you ask. Except my name, Carl Leonard Johnson. Right. You got me. Okay.
Are you sure it wasn't a demon?
Well, no, we don't know. We're demonologists,
They're all demons.
Yeah, well, I know somebody I'm very close to.
But
yeah. My identical twin brother. He would ascribe all spirit activity, overt and classic spirit activity to being demonic as a deception, which doesn't make any sense, but little in this realm does.
You are on a dual demonology show.
A
demonologist, a great historian, and of course, a psychic medium that is able to join us tonight. In that sense, as demonologists and people that have worked on this case, have you ever come across something that you would quantify as demonic?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, well, this is a special show. So.
Well, we already can say yes to that question, and at least I don't think she can yet.
But no.
You,
something that was hostile, demonic. You didn't want to mess with something like menacing. Came through, just shut that channel off, change that. You know what we're saying. Something sinister, malevolent, just undesirable and inconvenient. A boogaboo.
So, are you asking if anything's undesirable has come through to me?
Yes, in the spirit form. Or impression?
No, because I definitely put the intention out there that I want to work with, people that are that you would know, that you would love and care about. Now, has that said that I haven't felt nasty energy? I have felt nasty energy, but I wouldn't necessarily call it demonic. maybe from a grumpy spirit, but maybe, you know, not demonic.
And to go further, to kind of dig deeper, do you believe demons exist?
I do. I do. I believe that there's good and there's evil. There's the same as there's light energy and there's dark energy. And so I feel like there's both. There's a balance to the universe, and I feel like there's absolutely energies out there that could be classified as demons for sure.
Interesting. That's not what I expected you to say, but glad we asked.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I
believe
definitely
it's the
think that
same
there is something to that.
I'm sorry.
No, at least do you have any?
Oh,
do you
no.
have anything?
No, I was
further?
just gonna say, I believe there's the same distribution in live people and dead people of like good people versus jerks. You know, you could have good
Yeah.
people and jerks in life. You can have good people and jerks in death. They're not all of a sudden going to become great people just because they're dead.
Mhm.
Well, aren't all spirits
Yep.
very wise with vast repositories of knowledge? You know, maybe some of them don't really evolve after death.
Yeah, there's a movie.
Well,
what is it?
and it's interesting you say that.
Fine.
It's interesting you say that because, you know, people come through to me, and if they say that they were uneducated, you know, that, or if they're coming through as saying that they're uneducated in life, they're still saying that they are. So absolutely, like, you know, like Elise was saying, if somebody was a bit of a curmudgeon and they weren't the greatest guy when they were here, they'll come through and they'll say that sort of stuff. I've had fathers come through for their children to say, hey, I'm really sorry that I was not the greatest dad, and I'm taking ownership of the fact that I was a jerk. So, and still coming through with that. I had an older lady one time come through, acknowledge how mean she was, and then she still wouldn't apologize. And I was like, Jesus, like that's heavy, you know?
Yeah, you ever see the movie This Is the End?
No, I haven't.
Seth Rogen, James Franco, and what's his name? Jonah Hill. It's a funny movie about this, like the apocalypse, and you know, all the good people that haven't sinned are getting beamed up into heaven, right?
Oh.
And then
Yeah.
the rest who've sinned and done other things are going through the apocalypse. You know, of course, when Earth destroys,
The
they will
big
destroy.
tribulation.
Yeah, and I believe it's Seth Rogen, so don't quote me on this, but it's one of the main characters, and he's getting beamed up in the light, and he's talking about like becoming, you know, bad. You're still bad. He when he's almost close to the clouds of the beam of light, he starts flipping people off. He says, F you, I'm going to heaven, I'm going to... And all of a sudden, he's dropped back down. I was like, that's what it reminds me of, you know, like,
Oh my goodness.
yes.
That's awesome. Yeah.
You gotta see the movie. This Is the End. You'll die laughing.
This is the end. I'll definitely check that out. That's hilarious.
Yes, some spirits seem to have a sense of humor, which defies all logic, does it not? Something without a physical capacity for thought, and they got a sense of humor. There's one spirit we encountered as a team when I was a member of the Atlantic Paranormal Society. We're in Brooklyn, New York. I ended up dubbing this spirit Wise Guy, and everybody liked it. So we didn't have a name. We named him as Wise Guy because he'd come through with like zingers on our audio recordings.
Oh, nice.
One guy was saying, "I drive the demon out." You know, they don't scare me. And you hear this voice. It starts off incidental. It's actually you hear. I'm picking up on something. Heard this voice like mumbling, and then it starts going. And while this guy is, you know, going on with all this hubris about how he stands up to the spirits, you hear this voice, a male voice says, "Yeah, F you, man." You know? And then it makes a noise. Then it says, like it's just busting on him. And it's like this spirit is cool. He's, you know, he's has
Yeah.
to say. You know, so is Wise Guy.
Carl, do you have anything to add?
I love that.
Yeah.
We're at the end of our time. Do you have anything to add?
Just that you've increased, Christopher. You've increased my my interest. You've expanded my horizons on mediumship. You know, and I want to know more about it. And I have long contended that we do have this innate ability. At least people who are interested in developing it and opening to it, embracing it. You know, and just you make me want to learn more about it. And you make me an answer to my quandary. Well, maybe not an answer, but some hunch, some lead on what this message meant. Because I don't know. I don't know how to interpret it.
Elise, do you have anything else to add?
No, I've learned a lot, and like Carl, I would like to keep in touch with you and learn a little bit more. I've been taking
Absolutely,
classes
please
in
do.
parapsychology. I took a class in developing my abilities, and it hasn't been going all that well, but I still have an open mind, and I'm still working at it. So I would love to talk to you about it.
So we'll come to visit
I
you.
would-
We want to see you. We don't want to wait for USS Salem when you got a crowd of people around you.
Right.
James and I'll trek up there.
Well, Chris, you're also more than welcome. November 27th, come to my house for some turkey. And well, yeah, Chris, it
Thank
was
you
a
so
great
much,
pleasure
guys.
meeting. It was a great pleasure meeting you. Of course, in person. And you know, sometimes when you're dealing with people in this field, you can kind of get a hunch of who's good and who's bad. I believe that's the ability of discernment that maybe Carl and I have doing what we do. But I definitely know you're a good person. You mean well, and you know, I thank you for bringing your humble message and being straightforward and being honest, and that's what's important because you know, taking advantage of people and exploiting people is unethical and wrong. And I'm so glad you don't do so, and you do your best to give people ample and true messages, and that's important. So thank you for coming on and talking with us, and I hope you have a happy Halloween, and hopefully we catch you soon.
Great meeting you, Chris.
Thank you so much. It was great meeting you guys, and I can't thank you enough for having me on. We definitely have to be in touch. So thank you so much again. I appreciate all the kind
I
words
think a lot
and
of people
for
have
allowing
done
me to be on the show.
And thank you to everyone who's been watching along with
Yes,
us.
thank
Thank
you,
you for your great
Absolutely.
questions. Hopefully we answered some of them.
And see you guys at Warren's Seekers of the Supernatural Paracon.
Yay.
All right.